A few months ago during the Steam Next Fest, an indie title called Skin Deep caught my eye and made its way onto my wish list. It released this past Wednesday and I saw it as a great opportunity to talk about a game that doesn't already have 1,000 videos on it. It's a first-person stealth MSim primarily made by Brendan Chung over at Blendo Games with some help from other developers when needed. The title doesn't take itself too seriously, and thankfully the story isn't too deep because I'm mentally taxed from the Deus Ex series. So with a little break from that, let's go through why this title may or may not be right up your alley. You are an insurance agent named Nina Pasadena who works for Meow Corp protecting cats from space pirates. Yes, it's that ridiculous. On one of your jobs, you find out that someone put out a bounty on your head, so while having to rescue cats, you have to find out who and why this pirate leader wants you dead. If you can't tell from the premise, the story here takes more or less a backseat since the title is mainly focused around the gameplay. I have my own issues with this approach and we'll get to that later, but for now, just know that this game is about hurting cats. The art direction takes a more cartoony approach rather than a hyper-realistic one, which is a good thing. It'll prevent the game from aging at a rapid pace visually, and it goes hand in hand with a less serious approach to the story and the overall world. The lighting is pretty well done, even though it's not really used as a game mechanic, but it definitely adds to the environments. I wish I could say more about the game visually, but what you see is really what you get. Another thing that adds to these environments is the sound design, and let me tell you, they did not hold back. Areas you go into can have their own character with just noise. If you run into a really loud room, chances are that's where the FTL drive is.
Stop!
Health station here.
Not only that, but it's pretty easy to gauge where an enemy is or even what kind of enemy they are just from their footsteps.
Forever!
While there are no backing tracks in the environment, the ambience of the machinery and various electronics aboard the ships definitely creates an ambience that's really well done. So since music isn't played in the levels, where is it played and how is it used? Well, it's all mainly used for cutscenes and conversations, which is a shame because there are some bangers in this OST. From the tracks that give you a funky vibe to the ones that are just groovy. There are some tracks that invoke tension, but again, they're mainly used for cutscenes rather than the actual game. Honestly, the soundtrack as a whole is pretty goddamn good. It's just a shame that you only hear it during the story sections. Each level takes place on a ship and your end goal is essentially to rescue all the cats who pay for your services and escape. Thankfully, because of the less than serious tone this game has, the devs were able to have a little bit of fun with the ship design. They all have themes that set them apart from one another so they don't get monotonous while exploring. like the Herring, a ship specifically designed to haul a library of books through the galaxy, or the Portnid, which is a large mining tanker. Most of the ships will share rooms like the bridge, living areas, and rooms for the FTL drives, but they're all different and not just copy-pasted. Levels start out simple with only a few rooms to explore, but as the game goes on they become larger and more complex, with some levels having multiple floors to navigate through. Expect to creep around corners and crawl through vents to complete your objectives. On some levels you'll run into doors that require a keycard to open it, but if you don't feel like skulking around for one, you do have other options. You're free to explore the space around the ship and can even come up with your own ways of getting back in. You can go back in via airlocks, crawl in through trash chutes, or just break a window and go in that way while simultaneously killing any enemies in that room.
Seal vacuum immediately.
Now here's where things get tricky. Not only can doors be locked, but windows, vents, trash chutes, and airlocks can be locked down, requiring you to find a control panel to deactivate the barricades. On top of that, some of these can be hijacked by the pirates and require a passcode to bypass, which can be found on notes in the levels, but be careful when putting them in. If you get the code wrong and an enemy is nearby, it'll make a noise alerting any pirate within earshot. So what incentives exist to make players want to explore levels? Well, there are challenges for you to complete that vary from level to level. Some are side quests that come in the form of scattered notes, while others require you to kill an enemy in a particular way. It's honestly a healthy way to encourage a player to explore rather than have them find 30 items scattered through a level. I'm looking at you, Sticks. The levels can become mazes at times and do a good job at offering players variety when exploring. The only downside to the map design is that most of the levels are fairly simple to navigate and only become more complicated towards the end of the game. I don't know if this is due to the engine limitations or budget constraints, but after a while you get into a groove and the magic can wear off sooner rather than later. So now let's get to the actual gameplay loop. Once you spawn into a ship, you have one sole objective, and that's to rescue the cats that have been captured. They've been stuffed into boxes and it's your job to break them out. The way to do this is by pickpocketing or looting the cards to open them up. That's it. You can stealth your way through the whole game and elect to not kill any pirates along the way. It will be challenging, but it's totally possible. But what if you want to have a bit of fun? Well, first off, we have to establish the fact that the enemies in this game don't die when their health bars hit 0. Thanks to Skull Saver technology, whenever their bodies are killed, their heads will pop off and float to the nearest respawner. So no enemy is truly dead unless you deal with the head, and thankfully there are several ways to do this. You can send their heads out a trash chute, flush them down a toilet, or just chuck them bitches into space. Firearms are rare and mainly saved for the last portions of the level, so actually detaching their heads can be a challenge. The way the game wants you to do this is by stunning them with either pepper or making them slip on a banana peel or soap so you can jump on their bags and run them into any hazard nearby. You also have other environmental options to deal with enemies if you're paying close enough attention. Don't worry about things getting lost out in space. There's a vending machine in each level that will give you those items if you need them. There are some drawbacks to this playstyle, however. Because you may be a little bit more gung-ho, you'll likely not care if you're spotted or if caused an alarm. Once this happens, enemies will do more and more in order to stop you, like laying down mines throughout the ship or even purging the vents that you may be crawling through.
Good job, everybody.
One of my absolute favorite things that this game does is that the pirates have to check in occasionally. It's either on a timer or absolutely random, but they'll do a status check to ensure that everyone is still alive. In most games, this doesn't really amount to anything other than some dialogue, but here in this game, if someone doesn't check in, an alert will be started and things can start to go downhill. You can impersonate one of them over a walkie-talkie or by using a free mic usually found at the bridge to stop an alert from going off. Not only that, but if a pirate survives an encounter with you, they'll go heal themselves, which is honestly dope as hell. After saving all the cats and putting them into their escape pod, it's now time for you to leave the ship. But there's one small problem. A new wave of pirates comes in at the end of each level and you have two options of finishing it. You can either pickpocket the key to the boarding craft and steal the pirate ship, or you can eliminate the new and remaining pirates. One thing I will recommend is that you do your side objectives before calling the escape pod. You can get rid of every pirate and freely explore the ship prior to saving the cats. This is important to know now because once you kill the last pirate after the cats have been saved, the level just ends. So make sure everything is done before calling the pod. As you can probably tell by now, the game takes a more arcadey approach than a serious one where decisions have consequences which may rub a few people the wrong way. The benefit of this approach is that there's a lack of stakes in the story, so players can just sit back and enjoy the chaos that they can cause. The drawback, on the other hand, is that there's really not a lot of incentive to engage with what little story beats there are, and the game can quickly devolve into doing things just because. After going through the credits, you're taken back to your little hub area and are able to replay through previous levels. As I mentioned earlier, there are level challenges within each level to give you more incentive to explore and run into some fun interactions the game has. If you completed all the level challenges during your first playthrough and are craving for more, just wait around for the modding scene to pick up because thankfully this game has mod support via the Steam Workshop. I can't stress enough how smaller titles like this can flourish with a dedicated modding community. I can only imagine the levels that people are making right now or what new tools they're cooking up. I will say though that I'm not sure what the limitations of the engines the game uses are, so I can't reliably predict what's possible or how large and complicated levels can be, but hey, I'm here for it. Playing the game from beginning to end should take you roughly about 7 hours. Now, as we just discussed, that time can be way longer if you're trying to do every level challenge as you're going through the game. It's a solid length for a title from such a small studio, but there are times where you kind of just devolve into going through the motions just to make it to the end. Regardless, 7 hours is a solid time for a $20 title with a bit of replay value. Now, since the game did come out less than a week ago, there are a few issues that may affect your game. The biggest one being that if you start an animation while crouching, there's a chance that you get pushed out of the map. This only happened to me once, but others on the Steam forums are complaining about it as well, so be prepared. There's also a few visual bugs you'll run into as well, but they shouldn't affect the game overall. With everything else covered, how well does the story hold up? Well, it doesn't. It feels more like a placeholder than anything, which is reasonable from a mostly solo dev title. I don't expect him or any help he might have had to write the Epic of Gilgamesh, but to say that I was mentally checked out on the story would be an understatement. There are sequences focused solely around the plot, which thankfully don't last too long and explain things well enough that you know what's going on, but you probably won't care. This title is more focused on gameplay than it is the story, so it's to be expected, but a story that was a bit more engaging could have helped with this title a lot. While streaming it, many of my viewers were not entirely thrilled with the story and the lack of purpose of the protagonist. Something I see a lot of game devs do, all the way from indie to AAA, is that they write stories from the premise and just kind of do a series of then this, then that until the conclusion. Again, I'm not expecting the Iliad, but man, a bit more character development could have gone a long way because there's one or two interesting characters here and that's it. They're just here. If you're interested in what little story this game has, then click to here. So we're trying to find out who the pirate leader that has put out a hit on Nina is and why. The first step of doing this is by saving up enough money to buy a camera to find out exactly who the pirate leader is. Once you've secured the funds, you buy a camera with ridiculous zoom capabilities and learn the leader's identity.
My God. It's her.
After this cutscene, an old friend reaches out to Nina offering advice, but not for free. Once you've secured those funds by completing a few more levels, you finally get the information. It's revealed that Nina and her old friend, Little Lion, were well aware of her clone's existence, but thought that she was stuck in something called wonky space, thus no longer a threat. Not only that, but Nina accidentally created her. She decides that she needs to kill her clone before her clone kills her. Before Little Lion will help you, you guessed it, you have to do 3 more missions before he does. You know, typical video game bullshit. Once you have the funds, Lion leads you to a dentist convention where you plant a bug to track the clone's whereabouts. Before you can track her down, 5 vessels are trying to triangulate her position, but they each get invaded by pirates. And you guessed it, you gotta beat 5 more levels before you get to the final cutscene where you defeat your clone and become friends. Yeah. The story is just dumb. I know it's written by a small dev studio and that's not meant to be taken seriously, but it really does just suck and kills any incentives to see it to the end. Again, you're playing this game for the actual game and not the story, but man, it just hurts. It hurts. It's definitely a different MSim experience from what I'm used to. I like the ideas that it presents with, but it just feels off, like something's missing. I think it's because the story is a joke and I'm not emotionally invested into the world. Even stories in games like Blood West and Filcher weren't prominent, but they at least gave you reasons as to why you're doing what you're doing. I get that it's a title that's mainly focused around its mechanics, but without having a driving factor pushing a player, it can be easy for them to put it down. As to whether or not you should give it a shot yourself is honestly a toss-up. If the singular level approach appeals to you, or if you need a new playground to play in, then yeah, go for it. If the lack of an overarching narrative with very little world building alongside the repetitive gameplay turns you away, then go play some older MSims if you haven't already. I would say go play the demo and decide for yourself, but the devs made the stupid decision of removing it, so there's that. Skin Deep is not bad, but it's really only going to appeal to certain people. Even those who love MSims may not enjoy it because there's no story to follow. It's highly dependent on players challenging themselves by not being detected or by not killing any enemies. I doubt it'll scratch the itch of playing more notable MSim titles we're all familiar with, but there are some fun ideas and mechanics here that offer a somewhat different experience than what you're used to.